Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Fun time had by all. I'm Petey Rave, and here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my gang. We've got David.
Greetings and salutations, Record Breakers listeners and fans. I'm David, and I apologize in advance for this episode.
And we've got Drew.
Hey, I'm coming to you having seen Wicked 2.5 times, 2 3/4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Nice. We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about an album, very interesting album, some would consider a classic or at least a proto-classic album. And the provider of the album is Drew. Drew, what have you brought to us today?
Well, for episode number 420, there was a couple of bands I thought would be funny to bring. But one of them, for me, just because of the genre of music I feel most attached to, having played it for so long, I figured this one would be one of the better ones. It is the 1992 debut studio album from the Long Beach, California ska band Sublime, with 40 Ounces to Freedom.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious of like what experience and expectations from something like this from you, David. What were you coming into this album thinking?
Do you want the short version or the long version?
Whichever one you want to give.
All right.
Either one.
The short version is exactly what you think.
Yeah.
On the last episode of the Record Breakers podcast, the album that I brought was the third album from Days of the New. And I made the point that Days of the New were the sole only rock band during the 90s that really struck a chord for me. In the post-Metallica haircut, post-grunge landscape, I said on that last episode that I thought most American rock music was pretty terrible. And when I think about bands that are kind of near the bottom, well, to the Sublime fans out there, I'm sorry. They're never going to be one of my favorites. But I'm giving this album a try with an open mind and an empty stomach, a la cuisine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sublime is a as a person that, you know, as I've talked about before on this podcast and others, as a person who has spent years frequenting karaoke nights, I am very familiar with Sublime.
I don't want to think of the fucking frat boys who try to sing Sublime.
I'm very familiar with Sublime. That being said, I've never really hated Sublime. I like Sublime, you know, and like I've liked even like the songs. Obviously, it's funny. It is, you know, funny to kind of think about like the what might be the pain of hearing somebody like sing Sublime. But when you're at karaoke and you're hanging out with people and you're even like in those situations, yeah, it's some frat boys singing Sublime terribly, but they're fucking having a good time, and so are you, and you're hanging out with your friends. So to me, that generally I've never really had too much, other than it kind of being cliche in karaoke. I've never really had a negative reaction. In fact, I generally had a cool, positive thoughts of Sublime. So I was curious to kind of dive into a full album, because never really had dove into a full album, even though like if you look,
Really?
I don't think so. Like there's one of those
Either,
like
actually.
and especially not this one.
For you, David, I understand. Petey and me, I feel like sometimes rolled in the same circles. So like either Robin the Hood or 40 Ounces to Freedom, I figured somebody had in the car somewhere.
It's one of those things where it's like there's always those like random one albums that I don't remember having at least or consuming multiple times in full. I'm sure that it was played at different places and parties and other things, but I don't think, at least, and also I have terrible memory, so I probably have, and I just don't remember. So, what either here or there, I'm still coming into this with a fresh experience of going into a whole product, and getting some nostalgia. Yeah. Let's talk about this album musically. Drew, how would you describe this album musically? What would be like the themes and elements that you would like key in on?
Well, 40 Ounces to Freedom is really considered like pretty influential, is the best term to put it, to a lot of stuff that came after it. This being the debut album of a band of this nature, it is a little all over the place at times. But the intentions to me always feel right. And for lack of a better term, and you gotta kind of do it because the first song is mostly a vibe check, but the vibes of the record themselves are, like you said, it's kind of about having a good time, at least on the surface. When the lead singer's ending, maybe some of the songs were a little bit of a forewarning of things to come, I guess you could say. The thing about this record that I think is really, really cool is how much they wear all of the influences on their sleeve. They are not shy about it. They straight up mention bands like Half Pint, rappers like Eazy-E and KRS-One. They straight up cover the Toys and Toots and the Maytals. In the ska scene, there's always, and I've said this before, but there's always the thing of knowing your roots and like having an understanding of where the music came from, what it's about, and going forward understanding that like Jamaican music history. And I think putting Toots and the Maytals, putting the Toys and stuff like that up in this, using like Bob Marley references, using Boomtown Rats references, I think is really, really important to that for them. Because at the end of the day, yeah, there's a lot of it that sounds like three dudes from Long Beach, like just jamming in the basement, getting a little drunk, getting a little high. But you have also some really, really tight rhythm work, like insanely tight rhythm work. And I give a lot of the credit to that to Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson was the bass player for Sublime, but still is the bass player for Sublime. I shouldn't say was the bass player for Sublime. That seems weird. But his father was an accomplished drummer, like a big band jazz drummer for like the Shanghai Philharmonic Orchestra. Like he was in the United States Coast Guard Band. He was accomplished. And I think especially in the rhythm, you can very much tell there was some actual like understanding of music and understanding of how to piece it together. Brad, for as great of a songwriter as he could be with lyrics and as great of a singer as he could be when he tried, some of the demons he faced maybe made the album meander a little bit at times. But I think when it hits pretty well.
Mm-hmm. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this as carefree to a fault. The playing on the album, like Drew said, is pretty tight and well together. But over the course of this album, when you really dive in and listen to the songs and really get an idea of the music and the message that's being conveyed, you feel like you're witnessing somebody self-destructing, and they're mostly kind of vibing about it. And that was a little weird. Musically, yes, it is fairly well played. It's well played. It is well played. The songs are tight. The lyrics go where they're supposed to. And their cover songs are pretty solid as well. As an entire composition, the album is perfectly fine if you are into this. It's perfectly fine. It's upbeat. It's a nice atmosphere vibe, this album. And I think if you're someone who appreciates modern ska music and reggae and punk and that whole meld of styles, this is undoubtedly a formative album. So I don't have to tell you about it. But if you're curious, this one is probably one of those that you should go back and listen to.
Mm-hmm. You could dive into this album. You go back to Sublime, and this is Sublime while their sound was still cooking. Obviously, this is their debut album. This is still them kind of bringing in all the styles that they like. They're jumping around from being there's one time they're part one of the album one song they're a punk band, one song they're a reggae band, one song they're a roots reggae band, one song they're a rock steady band, one song they're a ska band. Once it's like they kind of jump around in all these influences, and it almost can feel like all their songs are like just covering different bands that they like. Just only 6 of them are actual literal covers. 6 of them are covers, but even in other songs, you can hear either outright interpolations or subtle kind of interpolations that I'll get into of things that they're influenced by. It's the hopefully whose iPhone? I'm like got distracted.
Sorry,
keys. I'm like,
my fiance was trying to make me do something.
Somebody needs to shake the keys. The influences are very bare, and all it kind of goes all the places. Obviously, Bradley Noel and bringing in a lot of different styles. It brings hip hop as well. It brings hip hop influences as well. Brings like all these kind of like styles in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different parts of different tracks. And you can see where it builds on that, and it builds on the sounds that is later to come, especially in later Sublime and in other stuff. I think it is tightly performed. It is tightly done. There is a laid back feel, and it is definitely a music for a certain mood, and possibly for being under a certain substance, weed,
marijuana. Let's just say it.
I know. I was saying weed.
Duh.
Weed.
You think the band that's inspired by a bunch of people from Jamaica likes smoking ganja, Petey?
Yeah.
You're crazy.
But in many ways, this is very much 1992 weed smoking culture, in that it loves Jamaica and it loves weed, but it's also very white.
There's a lot of white people in this band.
Yes.
Petey's words, not mine.
And it's also very like white relationship with weed. In that it's like positive and carefree and laissez-faire because weed has been legal for white people for decades. And let's just be real. Where, you know, other people of colors, the relationship with weed in this country, in music even, is different, and the way you can hear it in the music, even at then. So it's that, and then I think that's worth noting about the themes and elements and the tones and the personality of the album. Just because it's there, it's part of the stereotype of Sublime and people who jam to Sublime and people who jammed to reggae in the 90s here in America. And I think it's an important thing worth noting. But ultimately, this is an interesting record musically, and it has all those influences, and you can see it doesn't blend them. It just kind of has them.
It does them.
It does.
It executes them.
This is not necessarily a melting pot of those. This is like how people have said about Miami. It's not necessarily a melting pot, but a TV dinner where sometimes the peas get into mashed potatoes. But yeah, let's bring them to the key tracks. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Before I list my key tracks, I will say on your point of this sounding like it's, and I said it too, sort of meandering through the influences and not really mixing them well. The sad part to me is the moment I think they understood how to do that was the album they released like 2 weeks after Brad died. So it's like, oh, you guys figured it out. Oh, fuck. That sucks.
That's unfortunate.
You guys hit it. And like one of your main, and like David said, he's dealing with demons, but like in a weirdly upbeat way at times, which is weird. Like I said, the first song on this, Waiting for My Ruka, while sort of a fan favorite among Sublime fans, to me, it's just a vibe check. Like, it's sort of jammy. It's sort of like just is a mellow song. There's not much to it. But it sort of gives you where you're going to be headed, as far as the music is concerned. To me, 40 Ounces to Freedom is where this album starts to give you the full idea of what the sound is going to be. Again, the brilliant rhythm work, simple guitar parts, but putting Brad's substance abuse into like full view in a very weird way, looking back on it. Again, we didn't, like, nobody knew at the time what was going to happen a few short years later, but now looking back on it, it's like, oh, this is weird. Again, two of the covers, I have to mention them because one of them is one of my favorite ska songs of all time, which is 5446 Was My Number by Toots and the Maytals. And Smoke Two Joints, which is a cover of an old reggae song by a band called The Toys, and giving a look back at sort of those bands that came before you and sort of inspired the sound you're doing now. Again, like I said, sort of is a common refrain among the ska scene of know your roots. KRS One as a song being an acoustic jam about like one of my favorite rappers of all time, and how he's like, hey, like, school didn't teach me about these things. I had to go to KRS-One to learn about them, and that's sort of dumb. I think is a really weird thing to do in an acoustic jam song, but also it kind of works with Sublime. It's sort of part of the mystique. But my favorite song on this album, by far and away, probably one of my top two favorite Sublime songs all time. It's between this and Saw Red, which was I think Robin Hood. I think Saw Red's on Robin Hood. Now I can't remember. But Date Rape, a ska song that is a story that is violent, but also ends on a like either a terrible note or a very good note of like the bad guy getting his comeuppance, is sort of par for the course, especially around, I would say, the mid 80s to late 90s. You have a lot of these sorts of songs, and Date Rape is definitely that. The ending of that song gets very violent, and very rapey again. The whole song is very rapey, obviously, but it goes back around, but even touches on the fact, like, yeah, that sucks that happened to him too, but like it's hard to feel bad when he was doing it to others, sort of thing, and like crosses that divide as well. And it's just a fun, danceable ska punk song.
Mm-hmm.
About a guy getting locked up for date rape, which,
yeah.
I,
David, what would be the key tracks for you?
Okay, let's see. Track 3, Smoke Two Joints, the anthem for making weed your whole personality. We're only gonna die for our arrogance had me think, okay, this one's actually pretty good. This one is actually, I really enjoyed this song. Oh, it's a Bad Religion cover. Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. It's a Bad Religion song. Okay. Ball and Chain, which technically was the 7th song on the album, but it's part 2 of track 6. I liked the pacing of the song, and the horn work was really nice. The song that I was talking about at the top, Bad Fish, track 7. This is the one where I described it as the anti-Lane Staley song. It's an upbeat ska punk reggae song about heroin addiction. Not exactly Alice in Chains, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And Live at Ease, okay. And the album comes to a close with 2 tracks that I thought were kind of fun. KRS-One and Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I would kind of
I actually liked Thanks a lot. I'll say that.
If I were to, say the key tracks, obviously the tracks that stand out to me are the ones that I've heard a few times at karaoke. Obviously, when it comes to Sublime, the songs that are the songs that you hear at karaoke are all from the 3rd album from Sublime. But the songs that I also have heard,
A lot of Santeria.
yeah, especially here in Miami, Santeria kind of, I guess, it's kind of oddly enough hits for people. But I will, I just can't not point out the songs that I'm pretty sure I know almost entirely from karaoke, which is Smoke Two Joints, which is, like David said about making weed your whole personality. Oddly enough, people like to sing that song that hang out at our karaoke places because they make weed their whole personality. But it's a fun cover, and it's enjoyable. Bad Fish, I've heard quite a few times, in by people at karaoke. I don't know how many of those people know that it's about struggling with heroin addiction, but
How many
How
people
do you
don't
not
know?
know?
My dad, for years, didn't know Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers
Drew,
was about heroin addiction.
Remember, people didn't know what Rage Against the Machine was about.
yeah.
Right. So
A
how
lot of people are just really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
We gotta
How
remember
are you
that.
surprised about the Bad Fish thing?
But
A lot of people are just really fucking dumb.
Oh, they're real dumb.
yeah, but they're probably, some of them at least know that it is about going through and struggling with demons in your life and things in your life, and kind of vibe to it at a karaoke in a way. And yeah, I've heard Date Rape quite a few times in karaoke.
It's a good ass song.
It is a well-made song. I can only listen to it
Oh no!
so
It's
many
like
times.
the lyrics themselves like make me feel like a horrible human being.
But sometimes I'm just not in the mood. Just not in the mood.
No,
You know,
I 100% can agree with you on that.
just not in the mood. That's the thing about it's just like okay.
It's like Breaking Bad. Sometimes some episodes real hard to watch.
Like a peppy song about it's like about celebrating the prison the prison rape, just because a righteous target. Sure. But I understand. I get it. Other cool stuff was I think was it live? I know. Oh God, I have so much notes here, and some of them are a little scribbled up. So some things I know that in one of the tracks, and it might have been Badfish, I heard what almost sounded like it was going to become "What's Up" by the Four Non Blondes, and which is odd because that song was released a year after this album was released. So I don't know what was going to like. Then it was in some Southern California, so it might have been just like a vibe that people felt.
I was gonna say SoCal vibes, man.
Yeah,
like.
So I just thought that was interesting. I'm not even saying that.
Had a lot of crossover.
Yeah, so it's cool. It's like the ideas and things that are jumping here and there among songwriters. Live at Ease and DJs were fun. Like for fun, like hip hop influences. I would say What Happened was a silly song that I enjoyed. That part of it sounded like it was good. It just sounded like it was almost about to be Tequila, just like it was about to start to be Tequila, and then it stops, and it's just his own thing. And it's like, also the part where he wonders why everyone's mad at him a second after saying he was pinching girlies' behinds, like. You answered yourself just a second ago. Why, the
self-referential, like, oh, I know why this is, but I'm going to say.
I made a note about that in my conclusive thoughts.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, and like, KRS One was a fun tribute to one of the greatest rappers of all time. And also one of the best tag team wrestling moves of all time. Shout out to the Kings.
Kings reign supreme over nearly everyone.
Exactly.
Wait, there's I don't know about this wrestling.
Oh, the
move.
Kings of Wrestling.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
You do. It's the Kings of Wrestling. Claudio Castagnoli.
Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli.
And Chris Hero.
Yeah, you do. You've seen it.
You've seen it. But you'll refresh your memory in a moment.
Keep it moving.
But yes. Those are the songs. Those are the things. Let's bring it back around the horn and talk about those conclusive thoughts now. David, now you can get into it. David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
I'm just gonna go ahead and stomp this album and this band as just not for me. The songs on the album that I thought were decent ended up being the cover songs. They're just not for me. I did not like hearing a song about heroin addiction being upbeat and chill. I didn't like that. The contrast, I didn't like it at all. And the thing that you mentioned earlier, Petey, about wondering why everybody's mad at him after grabbing girls' asses, I wrote, this is some fuckboy shit. This because you mentioned earlier that frat boys, right? And that was my conclusion. And the final track, Thanks. I know Petey at the top mentioned that these dudes are white. And I will say before that track, my yellow flag was up. But after this track, it went down. So that's fine.
Which
fine.
One? Sorry.
Thanks. the final track.
Thanks. Okay. Got you. That's fair.
I know Sublime has a huge following. I know Bradley Noel meant a lot to a lot of people. I am not and never will be one of them. I'm sorry. Sublime is just not for me. They just aren't.
My conclusion is Sublime. Sublime is just that band that is just that that keyhole, that like particular stereotype. There's a lot of this album that I was, it was chill and it was vibing, it was fine, but there was quite a bit of this album where I was thinking that I might be neither high enough and or either or both, neither high enough nor white enough to really be getting this, really be vibing with this.
Petey's words, not mine.
I stand by them. I said what I said, because it is a particular dude bro vibe. But it's kind of an nascent form. One of the things I've been noting about kind of where lately, so I don't listen to terrestrial radio too much. Like nobody really does, unless you drive or unless you work. And even then, I have Bluetooth in my car, so. The only times I do listen to terrestrial radio is sometimes due to the fact that it's kind of a weird getting into the weeds, but I feel like I have to explain. Sometimes I leave the house and realize that the Bluetooth isn't working because I have to, for some reason on my phone, if it's been a while, I have to manually open Spotify so that it'll start playing music. And I kind of just don't feel like doing it, so I just turn to the radio. That is to say, I've been every once in a while checking in our two rock radio stations. There was
Petey. It's either AC/DC, Pink Floyd, and Led Zeppelin.
Well, there's that. That's one of those stations.
Yep.
That's one of those stations. But what works broader than this, and we'll talk about this. So, there's one station that's always been there for as long as I can remember, which is Big 105.9, WBGG, Big 105.9. Used to be Big 106, but I guess people had a problem with them saying they're Big 106, even though they're on 105.9, even though obviously. Everyone knows that you can't literally be on 106. You have to be on one of the odd numbers. At least here it was. They have always been here. They've always been the classic rock station. And
classic rock that really rocks.
And they play a variety. They play a variety. They can play everything from even when I was a kid in the mid-late 90s, they played 80s rock and things like that. They played AC/DC, but they played Zeppelin. They played older Metallica. They played Rolling Stones and a nice variety. They had some really cool stuff. And it was fun to listen to it. But they were the classic rock station. And then, growing up, 94.9 Zeta was the new rock station, the alternative station. Now we have 104.3 The Shark, and for a while they were we're the new alternative, where they would play newer alternative sounds, but then some slightly older rock and alternative stuff. But it feels like they've kind of settled into a sound which I'll sum up right now. It really felt like they've abandoned, and rightfully so, abandoned being new rock, and now we have two classic rock stations, which Big 105.9 and 104.3 Shark. And how I classify them, Big 105.9 is the classic rock station for Gen X and Boomers, and 104.3 The Shark is the classic rock station for Millennials. This is all to say, Sublime is one of those quintessential millennial classic rock bands. White millennial classic rock bands. It is for a particular vibe and particular time. And it feels like of a time, it feels like of a place, and it feels like of a people in a mood. And I don't dislike it, and I will never not welcome it at an establishment while it's playing at the function, and it's fun. But it was hard to really get connected to it as someone who is as I think I've hopefully proven, is very not nostalgic and very not wanting to overly dwell on the classics just because they're the classics. And I'm wanting, fresh things. It just feels a little dated. It feels a little of its time and of a place. And that's fine. Ultimately, it's fine. Ultimately, it's good. Ultimately, the sound is good.
When 89X, Detroit and Windsor's new rock alternative, would play Sublime, I'm just going to keep it a buck. You know that JPEG of the dude that's taking off his headphones?
Yeah.
And he's not happy with what he's hearing? Yeah, like I said, Sublime was not very high on my list.
For me, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think overall that's pretty much my conclusion, is that Sublime are they perform well. They're definitely a quintessential member of the list of millennial classic rock bands, but not always my mood. And I think this album was good, but ultimately not gripping for me. Drew, as you give us our conclusion. How would you conclude on this album as a whole?
The thing to me about Sublime, one, I brought them in partially because of the joke, haha, 420, whatever. The reason I brought 40 Ounces of Freedom was because it was the first studio album, because it was so early, and because it did, like both of you guys have said, like lay out exactly that, right? There was a lot of problem in this record, even for how much I respect it as that record. As far as songs I'd put up, like let's say I'm throwing together a ska punk playlist, there's probably 2 songs from this album I would throw on if I had 75 to 100 choices from the mid 80s to late 90s, right? But the thing to me about Sublime and about this record is, one, like you said, there's a certain vibe to it, but also the thing about Sublime and a lot of ska, to me, honestly, and we touched on this a little earlier, sometimes people fucking miss the point real hard. And
maybe I'm missing the point here. Maybe I am.
No, I don't think you did, because Bad Fish made you not feel good about what it was. To me, that's you getting sort of that song. A lot of people, there's always the joke that people say, and I hate it, but I'm going to bring it up, that ska music is what a 12-year-old boy hears when there's mozzarella sticks coming to the table. And ska as a genre is so much deeper than that. And I feel like Sublime was one of those bands that got co-opted by certain groups of people that missed the point, and missed sort of Brad yelling for help through a lot of the band's discography. It is like somebody who watches Fight Club and thinks it's a cool, manly movie about being macho and tough. It's that sort of like whoosh. Like, no, there are parts of this record that are a guy like dancing through asking for help. And it's like, you guys missed the boat on that one. Like, looking back on this, if you can listen to this from front to back and not kind of feel bad for Brad at times, especially, like I said, like on Bad Fish, especially, and a couple other songs, maybe reevaluate you evaluating music as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But the songs that do hit, I think do still hit for me. Even if, like me and Petey were talking about, like they kind of, like if you listen too hard at the lyrics of Date Rape, it kind of feels bad. If you listen too hard at the lyrics of 40 Ounces of Freedom, it's like, oh, this is bad. But if you're like you're just kind of chilling, there's some gold in these hills, in my opinion.
Yeah, those are our thoughts on Sublime's 40 Ounces of Freedom. And now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for. Our Haiku Reviews, where we sum it all up in poetic form with the 575. Hit you with the poetry and the symmetry and the telemetry.
Go with the easies.
David, what is your haiku?
My haiku. Contrasting lyrics. Seminal West Coast ska punk. Just isn't my vibe.
Mm-hmm. My haiku. 56% not enough for Florida to do the right thing.
Really? What? Really?
That's how many people voted for the legalization of recreational marijuana. But
what? It's got to be like
it has to be a
60% or something?
majority, yes.
In Florida,
and they just passed that recently.
Ohio tried.
But we succeeded.
Ohio tried to do that bullshit, and it failed. Although our marijuana legalization, I think, had 61%, so we still would have passed it.
67% of people are okay with overfishing and overhunting our resources.
All right, Petey, let's take it home.
Drew, what is your haiku?
Even though no horn, I still enjoy the ska punk. Rest in peace, Bradley.
I will say, I did have a form of that haiku has been going around for a while, but I did think of a great one right before that I want to shout out. My other haiku was the kind of album that'll surely make you love refrigerators. I love refrigerators. Shout out to the people on TikTok who done that video. You can of course find Sublime's 40 Ounces to Freedom on our Spotify playlist and our YouTube playlist. If you haven't already listened to it at some point in your life, check it out there. Do your due diligence and your due diligence on those playlists. Well, I mean, next week's record, it's going to be provided by me, and I'm going to bring the mood up and bring some energy to kind of like contrast this. I was listening to as I sometimes do, I'll listen to just new rock playlists or new metal playlists curated on Spotify just to see what's out there. And I was listening to the new metal, N-E-W metal, not N-U as in the genre.
Damn it, I was just about to put that into the side chat. Yeah. New metal or new metal?
Yeah, new metal, not new metal. Howdy, y'all. Just popping in for a bit of a correction on the pick. After we recorded the episode and after announcing that pick, Some controversies in the band's past came known to me and to us, and we found it to be a bit too egregious to ignore, and we decided to pivot away to a different band. Also found in those same playlists that I was searching through on Spotify. Bit of an older band, but completely new to us, new to me. We're going to be talking about a Spanish metal band named Tierra Santa and the album Un Viaje Épico. Now back to the regular episode. It's going to be fun. But yeah, in the meantime, that'll be next week. This is this week. You can, of course, find us all over the internet, rebelli.net, Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. Watch the VODs and episodes on YouTube. Watch us live on Twitch. Find us everywhere you find podcasts. Like, share, subscribe, leave comments, leave discussions. Let us know like your thoughts on the albums, things like that. Love to hear you. Do all the things. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo, I gotta go. Bye.
Bye. Annyeong. Fighting.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.